In this video, I'm going to go over my top 10 novels that I read in 2025, and I've got the Board of Judgment out here. First off, I want to go over a few books. I don't even really want to call these honorable mentions. These are very classic books. Most people have heard of these. These were all rereads for me. So we've got the entire Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov. We got The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. Anthony Burgess, A Clockwork Orange, preferably in the complete version. I talk about that in my video. And then Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. Like I said, these were all rereads. They don't need any introduction. They're all classics. If you haven't read them, I highly recommend it. And if it's been a long time, they're probably worth a reread. But now let's get on to my top 10 novels I read, and these were all brand new novels to me. None of these were rereads. So first, we're going to go with Half Past Human by T.J. Bass. And this is a very unique science fiction book. I have not read anything like it. Part of it has to do with T.J. Bass being a full-fledged doctor, and he puts a lot of biological terms into his prose. This is set in a very far future Earth where most of humanity has morphed into this next evolutionary stage. There's 3 trillion people, or this next version, all living underground on the planet. Most of the surface is used to provide some food for them. It's not the most appetizing food in any means. And there are 1 million humans still left on the planet. These are normal 5-toed humans. And the story really follows a few of these humans as they're trying to navigate this strange, bizarre world, as it seems like they're getting kind of pushed out of the way by this mass of this next version of humans. There's a lot going on in this story. It is gruesome at parts. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Like I said, I haven't read anything quite like this in the past, but and I know it's not for everyone, but if any of that sounds interesting, this is definitely a unique, fun, interesting read. Okay, next up we got Startide Rising by David Brin. Now, I had read one other David Brin novel in the past, and I knew he was a fantastic author, but I did not know what I was getting myself into with this one. I started reading it fairly casually, and I definitely want to reread this one in the future. This one blew me away on how good it was done. The basic idea, this is kind of part of an uplift trilogy, so if a sentient race, and there's aliens all over the place in the galaxy, but if a sentient race goes and uplifts another race, then that race is kind of subservient to them for a certain amount of time. And there's a lot of mystery of if humans were uplifted or if this was just a natural process that seems to be very unique in this universe. But humans have uplifted dolphins and apes, but they don't really like that idea of keeping them subservient to them. So they're doing things a little bit differently, and this is mostly revolving around a group of humans and dolphins and one chimpanzee who are running from something and get kind of trapped on this planet. And there is so much going on in this book. There are so many mysteries to unravel. And one of the difficult things for me were all of the dolphin creatures. It was hard to differentiate between them. But there are some artistic renditions you can check out on the internet to help kind of put them in order in your mind as you're reading the story. And next time when I reread this, I'm definitely going to be using that as kind of a study guide and taking notes as I go, because I had no idea what I was in for in this one. It still made the list, but on a deeper read, I think this could be one of my all-time favorite science fiction books. So that gets number 9. Next up, number 8, we got The Goblin Reservation by Clifford D. Simak. If you've watched my channel, you know I'm a big fan of Simak, and this is one I had never read before, and this is a fantastic book. We've got a main character who shows up back to Earth after this journey, a kind of a journey he stopped. He didn't quite get to his destination. He gets turned around and he comes back to Earth. And he finds out that he had already returned and been killed. And so instantly you're set up with this big mystery of how this person could have shown back up. If there's two copies of this person, we're not really sure. He groups up with some of his old companions and some new companions. They go on this very interesting quest. There's a lot of things that happen in this one. There's fairy tales thrown in and humor and adventure, all with this mystery going on in the background. There's even a love story happening in this one. And this, in my opinion, has one of the better endings of any Clifford Simak book. I really enjoyed this one, and this is definitely one that I want to reread in the future as well. So that gets number 8. Okay, next up, number 7, we've got Babel 17 by Samuel R. Delany. This was a very good book by Delany. The first book I read by Delany I didn't really like. That was The Einstein Intersection. But this one was a complete flip for me. This really involves the concept of language and how it could be used as a weapon. And there is this weaponized language from another alien species called Babel 17. And so our main character is a linguist, and she gets kind of recruited to help figure out how the human race could protect themselves against this. She gets this very interesting crew as they travel around hunting down the source and possible ways to combat this. There's some of the most bizarre space travel going on in this. There's some very bizarre scenes. It was all brought together really well. It's a very satisfying book, and it's very short, and I couldn't recommend this one enough. This was just a great read. Next up, we have Simulacron 3 by Daniel F. Galouye. Galouye is not a very talked about author, and this was the first book I read from him, and I think he needs to be read more. This was great. This book came out in 1964, and it dives deep into simulation theory. And if you've seen The Matrix, like everyone on the planet pretty much has, that just kind of just gets into simulation theory. This book, in my opinion, takes it a whole nother level. And it's such a cool concept. In the future, there's all these people who go around and do opinion polling. And there's this whole group of people that do this as a job. Well, they create, some computer scientists create Simulacron 3 as a simulation to do this opinion polling in a virtual space so that they don't have to go around and ask people these opinions. Where it goes from there is wild. I don't want to spoil anything about this one. You got to go out and find this. It's a very entertaining short read. It goes places that you're not quite sure where it's going to go. And I can't wait to read more books from Daniel F. Galouye. So that's number 6. Number 5, we've got Macro Life by George Zebrowski. This book was another one that blew me away. I knew a little bit about this and how some people compare it to maybe the closest thing that had been written to Star Maker by Olaf Stapledon. So I went into this with a little skepticism, but it was amazing. It was basically written in 3 acts. It follows one main character, sort of. I don't want to give anything too much away. But the very first act is a very near future disaster story, and it is great. Just that part alone, I loved. I love kind of post-apocalyptic stories. This one has a very interesting twist to it. It follows this very rich family as they were inventors of this certain element or really helped get it going, and then disaster strikes. And the first part is amazing. The second part kind of gets into this story a little bit more and this concept of macro life that Zebrowski comes up with. And there's a lot of talk about what a utopia is in this one, or how it could be created. And part of the idea is that the utopia would need to be mobile. You'd need to travel around to not get bored in a way, but it's way more than that. And so this mobile utopia is now set up traveling around the galaxy, and they discover another branch of humanity that had crashed on a planet and kind of went back to the Dark Ages. There is so many cool things that happen in this second act. There's a bit of a unique, weird love story going on, and it's really just setting up the final act, which is very close to Star Maker, if you've read that book from Olaf Stapledon. It goes on to huge galactic, cosmic scales. Humanity is barely even recognizable anymore, but there's a big crisis at hand that needs to be figured out, and I'll just leave it at that. This book was fantastic. I couldn't recommend this one enough, and that's why it's number 5. Okay, number 4, we've got Bring the Jubilee by Ward Moore. This is an alternate history science fiction book, and I'm usually not that big into alternate history. I've read quite a few, and so once again, I was a little skeptical going into this, but first off, Ward Moore is a literary author who decided to write science fiction, and it shows. His prose, his mastery at storytelling is on full display in this book. And this is an alternate history book where the South had ended up winning the Civil War, and we're about 80 years further into the future beyond that point in time. And so we really get to see what Ward Moore came up with how society would be so different 80 years after this event flipped around. And it follows a main character who's kind of going through his coming of age. This has some very, very cool time travel concepts thrown into it. The ending I loved. This one just hit home for me. There were so many things I loved about this book. And Ward Moore didn't write that much science fiction. He wrote a bit of literary fiction. But man, I'm really glad he wrote that one because I loved it. Okay, next up we've got number 3, Dr. Blood Money by Philip K. Dick. This is Philip K. Dick writing a post-apocalyptic tale. It's fairly absurd. There's some wild things going on in this one. The premise is where a lot of the absurdity comes in. But for such a short book, he gets into some characters in this story that I will never forget. There is some normal Philip K. Dick weirdness mixed in with this whole post-apocalyptic thing going on. And this is a book you will not be able to put down. If you like Philip K. Dick and you haven't read this one, you've got to check it out. I don't even know how to really explain this book, but I loved every bit of it. And that's why it's number 3. Okay, number 2, this might be a little recency bias because I just finished this book not too long ago, but The Diamond Age by Neal Stephenson. I was starting to think Stephenson wasn't quite a writer for me, and this book blew me away. I love the near future, or 100 or so years into the future, society that he developed that had been completely transformed by nanotechnology. Throughout the entire book, he's giving you these inventions and ways that nanotechnology has completely changed civilization and even people's individual lives in so many different ways. In some ways, it's created some kind of utopian aspects, but humans are still doing human things in this one, so it isn't quite a utopia. And then we've got a coming-of-age story from this girl named Nell who gets her hands on this book, which is called The Young Ladies Illustrated Primer. She was never supposed to get her hands on it. It was supposed to be for someone else. And you see how this piece of technology changes her entire life. And the Young Ladies Illustrated Primer itself is such a cool concept in science fiction, something that it's so unique and so well developed in this book, and how it changes this girl's life. I love this story. I couldn't recommend this enough, and it completely changed my mind about Neal Stephenson. Okay, and number one, you might have seen it coming. We've got Olaf Stapledon's Star Maker. This book I had known about for quite a long time, and I'd been wanting to read it. I started reading it a couple years ago, and I just wasn't in the right frame of mind, because this isn't really a novel so much as just pure speculative fiction. It was written way back in the 30s, if I remember correctly. Stapledon is known for writing this philosophical science fiction. And wow, this is a masterpiece in my mind. One of my favorite science fiction books I've ever read. And what it is a story around a character as he starts to transform his consciousness into something new, something that's kind of the next evolutionary stage of humans. And he starts traveling around nearby solar systems throughout the galaxy, bumping into all sorts of things and kind of merging with them. The story keeps getting deeper and deeper until it expands across the entire cosmos, and you finally get to meet the Star Maker. This book was amazing. It's very challenging in some ways. Like I said, don't go into this one thinking that you're going to be reading a narrative that reads like a novel. It's a book of ideas all thrown together with Stapledon's amazing prose. There are paragraphs in this that other authors came along and wrote huge novels or trilogies about. The amount of ideas that come out of this are amazing. I want to go back slowly and dissect this one section by section in the future and do kind of like standalone videos about it, because there's just so much that happens in this book. And I can see why this is a classic and inspired so much in the genre of science fiction. So that's my top 10 list for 2025. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought. And I'm sure there's plenty of difference of opinion. That's why we like BookTube, and we can get all kinds of different ideas from other people. And I really can't wait for 2026. I hope I could even come close to a year like this, because in my opinion, this was just a fabulous reading year, and a lot of it has to do with all the people that watch this channel. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.